to look professional.
Okay.
Added all the parties
I just
to the
wanted debate
structure.
so badly. This is what I've been waiting.
Buttface, literally shut up.
Oh my god, you're so
Wait.
mean to me.
Panini, on the YouTube video, do you want to copy and paste the structure I set in debate 1 and then put it in the description?
To look professional.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Added all the
I
parties
just
to
wanted
the
debate
structure.
so badly.
NPX, your cue is now.
Buttface, literally shut up.
Oh, we're
Oh my god,
recording
you're
right
so
now?
mean to me.
Panini, on the YouTube video, do you want to copy and paste the structure I set in debate 1 and then put it in the description?
Alright.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we added all the
I
parties
just
to
wanted
the
debate
to the
so
political
badly.
NPX, your cue is
Okay,
now.
everyone
Everyone not
literally
affiliate.
shut up.
Everyone
we're recording
not.
right now? Wait.
Everyone who's not.
Panini, on the YouTube video, do you want
Holy
to copy and
shit.
paste the structure I set in debate 1 and then put it in the description?
Alright, I already said okay.
So if we
NPX.
added all the
I
parties
just
to
wanted debate
the
so
okay, so we are
badly.
NPX, your
recording.
cue is
Okay,
now.
everyone
Everyone not
literally
affiliate.
shut up.
Everyone
we're recording
not.
right now?
Yes.
Everyone who's not.
Panini, on the YouTube video, do you want
Holy
to copy and
shit.
paste the political kickback official debate between Femoid Dream Team and Akuma and Chaddrick 𝗷𝗶𝘁𝗁. The debate topic will be transsexuality, gender, and transitionary surgery. The Femoid Dream Team, would you like to start off?
With our opening statement? Yeah,
Yeah,
Rani.
you have 2 minutes.
Okay, sure. In today's debate, Buttface and I will be asserting that 1, transgender individuals are completely valid and there are medical reasons, like sexual differentiation in the brain, that warrant transition surgery. 2, transitionary surgery has immense mental health benefits, as demonstrated by empirical evidence. And 3, sex is bimodal and not binary, and there are many biological markers of sex that point to this as scientific fact.
All right. If that is all, would the Akuma and Chaddrick like to introduce their stance?
Sure. Chaddrick, you want to do it or should I?
Nah, you do it.
Well, first of all, we agree that there are some biological factors to transgender people that cause transgenderism in them. That is. But we disagree that transgender surgery is the only way to treat this. And we disagree that gender is not binary.
Is that all? You still have
Sure.
more time. Okay. So with the affirmative,
I mean,
like,
we should just.
oh no, you can go. You can go.
We just want to get to the
Where would you guys like to start?
debate
Meat and
part,
potatoes.
actual debate part.
Okay, if you would like to, if the affirmative also would like to agree to just go into straight free flow, then we can introduce into that.
We can do that. I think that would be the best
Sure,
option.
yeah.
Okay, so now you can engage in the free flow.
So, we have empirical evidence for all of our claims. Is there a specific claim you'd like us to justify first?
I mean, sure. Bring up what you have for gender is bimodal instead of binary.
Oh, of course.
Okay, sure. So
There are-
basically, there are many biological markers of sex. So I think first in this debate, what I'd like to do is just come to like a consensus about the definition of sex and what actually determines sex. So our definition of sex is quite complex, since there are many biological markers of sex, which include chromosomes, gonads, hormones, secondary sex characteristics, external genitalia, internal genitalia, skeletal structure, gene expression, brain structure, and also, to some extent, personal identity. All of these things can be influenced independently, which is why we think that sex is bimodal, since you can have a lot of these characteristics, some of them being male and some of them being female. So yeah, that's basically where we're coming from when we say that sex is bimodal and not a binary.
To talk about bimodal sex characteristics and what that kind of means, Ronnie, do you have the definition of bimodal for them?
Right, yeah, I
Usually, bimodal means the presence of two or bi statistical modes, which can be seen as peaks in a graph. The two modes represent probability clusters, which, with regard to human sex, this means that for some sex characteristics, there may be common norms among people whom we tend to assign as male and female, but there are also clear overlaps present between the peaks. This is what makes sex and gender bimodal and not binary. Finally, at a risk of getting too mathematical, A bimodal distribution is, by definition, a continuous probability distribution with two different modes. In other words, it is a spectrum that has clusters. In sources, I'm going to send two pictures that can really help us get the idea of what binary versus bimodal looks like on a spectrum. So if you'd want to look at that for more context as to what bimodal means, that just sent.
So you're saying that if someone is not perfectly feminine or perfectly masculine, they're a third gender. That's what you're classifying them as. Just because they're not perfectly feminine or masculine.
Yeah.
We're saying that there's
Okay, Buttface, you can.
you can
Okay,
take it.
so basically, where we're coming from with sex being bimodal and not binary, is that there are a lot of influences to sex, right? There isn't one single biological marker that we can point to and say that this is the end all be all of sex, and every other biological marker is pretty much irrelevant to what sex actually means.
There is one marker that we need to point out though. It's the chromosomes. If someone has a Y chromosome, they're technically considered a male because most of the time, more often than not, their body is gonna respond to that. And even if they have XX and then a Y chromosome, they're mostly gonna be having male organs.
Right. Okay. So, if we're gonna use chromosomes as a metric to determine sex, then chromosomes themselves, there are multiple chromosome patterns in terms of sex. There isn't just two. So by that definition, then sex is not a binary, right? Like there are multiple biological markers for sex. I don't really think we can just take into consideration only chromosomes and then completely dismiss, for example, brain structure or skeletal structure or gonads or external genitalia or any other biological marker of sex. So I think it would just quite frankly be anti-scientific to completely dismiss all of these other factors that influence sex.
Yes, but honestly, how many hermaphroditic people do you know?
There
is either males or females based on the...
There is about 1.7% of the population that is intersex, which is about as common as having...
Yes, but that would be considered abnormal. That would be considered a mutation of genes and not a standard.
It would not.
The hundreds of thousands of people that are existing today are not simply a mutation of genes. Like, they're valid, real people. And to deny that intersex is like not real or not important is ignorant when they make up 1.7% of the population.
I'm not saying they're not real, just that they're a mutation of genes, and that doesn't mean that they're a third gender that's perfectly valid here.
We're talking about sex here.
We're talking about sex, and you just said that chromosomes would be a valid metric to determine sex. So I'm just saying that if we're going solely off of chromosomes, then sex itself is not
a binary. Because if you look at the pictures I sent, there would still be that overlap of the other, 4 intersex genders that would exist between the two perfect male and female chromosomes. When we say binary, we imply no one can exist in between the two modes. And to deny that is just going against the definition of what is binary and what is bimodal.
Okay. Chaddrick, anything to say to that?
Huh?
Great. Great.
So you're trying to say you're trying to say that being a redhead is just as common as being a hermaphrodite.
Yeah, I can provide.
Yes, statistically that is true.
I'll provide the statistic.
Among what population?
Here, I'll send you the statistic.
Yeah, where are you sending it?
I'll send it in sources. It'll take me a second to
Alright.
find it out.
Buttface, where do you need me to cite the pictures? Because I don't see them in sources.
You don't? Did I
I
not?
can just send it.
Yeah,
I don't think you did. I will just send the graph of what we mean when we're talking about sex as.
you not?
Oh, you sent a message, but where's the source?
I'm getting the link right now.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Okay, wait, never mind. Okay, I don't know why mine didn't load. Okay.
Yes, but you need to keep in mind that even if these people have external genitalia of other sex, they still have internal genitalia. I mean, not genitalia, but like, either, what's it called?
Hold on. Wait a second. Among what populations is intersex? Among what population is there 1.7% of the people intersex?
Among the general population. Like, it's an estimate of
Like
how
the
many
population
redheads
of
there are.
America? The population of the world? Because, for example, black people... Hold on a second. Black people have such low rates of having red hair that it's almost non-existent. And they make up, what, like 20% of the world population? So I think that could skew the results if it's the entirety of the world population.
Do you think we shouldn't be taking from the general populace?
So you
Well,
think
not
we
for
should
red
be
hair.
taking from the general populace because black people exist?
Okay, to say that, well, because one group is statistically less likely to have XYZ means that we should just exclude them is not true.
Is literally
we wouldn't
actively
be
trying to
controlling for all
skew
of the
data.
variables.
You're like literally trying to exclude a whole demographic out
When
of the
we're
sample
looking
size
at how many
because
people on
Yeah,
average
except hold on a second. Redheads. Okay, let's say that there was only 100,000 black people living on Earth, and we said that being black is about as common as being intersex. Do you see the skew there?
Well, is it not true?
Well, because you
If
see
there's
red
about 100,000
hair
black
is
people on Earth, and
you know,
there's about 100,000 intersex people on Earth,
huh?
when we look at these percentages, we can make a we can get a good guess at what it's like, and we can see on average, you know, it's about as likely as having red hair in a general population.
Can we go back to the topic, if possible?
Yeah, I would like to. So I hear you guys keep saying that, like, no matter what, intersex people are going to have a certain degree of masculinity or femininity in their genitalia. But that doesn't actually correlate to any sort of sexual differentiation in their brain. I can send a source on that. I think it's the same one I sent last time. But this study finds that the degree of masculization in genitalia from intersex people doesn't correlate with the degree of masculization in their brain. So claiming that that actually makes a difference as to, like, how they're actually programmed isn't inherently true. And second of all, that proves our point that intersex can prove that gender is not binary, because it's proving that they're not perfect. They have a certain degree of masculinization, but they're not perfectly masculine, therefore they can't be at the peak of the graph, and it becomes more of a spectrum, as we can see in the pictures I sent earlier, how they do exist in between, because they're not perfectly masculine or feminine. They have a mix of both. They have bimodal characteristics.
Yes, but you need to keep in mind
But
that they're
a birth defect. Most of them are sterile. It's a birth. It's a
Sorry,
birth defect.
Rani, if you wanna.
Sorry.
that as well.
I don't. In regards to intersex people, when we say that sex is bimodal and not binary, we're not saying that we can't distinguish certain biological features from, like, we can't distinguish them as, like, female and male. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that in the context, like, if we're talking about people in general, there are multiple biological markers of sex. And all of these biological markers of sex are influenced differently, as Buttface is going to prove with her study about sexual differentiation in the human brain. So if all of these biological markers of sex are influenced independently, then there are cases where people have certain male characteristics and certain female characteristics, and this would make them intersex. When we're talking about sex being bimodal, this is literally what we're saying, right? To deny the sex is bimodal is to just deny the existence of intersex people.
So unless you kind of want to go against the belief that intersex people exist, you'd have to concede that sex would therefore be bimodal by definition.
Exactly what you guys are reinforcing.
No, I would not.
They
now is just
definitely
what
do
we
exist,
are
but you need
saying.
to
They
keep in
exist.
mind.
They exist for sure. I'm not denying that they exist.
Right, so then sex
But
And
that
their
doesn't mean
existence
that they're a
is not-
norm. You see, you're trying to say that there's a bimodal gender spectrum, and it's the norm.
Okay,
But-
first of all, we're talking
There
about
is
sex.
a gender.
Second of
There
all,
is a sex spectrum.
Of
There
course
are
not.
certain degrees of masculinization that you can have and feminization that you can have according to how many biological characteristics that you have that line up with femininity and masculinity.
I'm gonna
Right?
try to
That is
explain
literally by definition a spectrum. And there are intersex people who fall right in the middle of the spectrum, and there are other people who will be more masculinized or more feminized
Can I say
based
something?
on
Their birth except it would be a difference if there was a race of people called the intersex people who have penises and vaginas, but it's a birth defect. They're most of the time they're sterile. They can't have kids.
But do you
So it's
understand how
not
that-
like they're not viable humans.
they're not viable
you saying
humans because
intersex
they can't
people aren't
reproduce.
humans?
So in that case,
Yeah.
would you regard like cisgender people who
like,
are
so if you're not
like
if you- if you're
infertile,
not
would you
fertile,
regard them
you
as
aren't a human?
subhuman? Like
No, I'm not. I'm
confused
not
as to
saying
what-
that they're sub. No, I'm not saying that they're subhuman. You're trying to say that the sexuality
Can I
or
clarify our premise
Okay,
here?
wait. Can I just
I'm gonna
ask
clarify-
one question?
you're trying to
real
say that
quick?
sex is on a spectrum because there's people with birth defects that messes up their
Okay,
identification
I don't know what
of sex.
metric we're using for birth defects, but anyway, if I'm like, we are literally just.
Hold
asserting
on,
that
hold on
intersex
for a second.
people-
Hold on for a
Wait,
second.
let her finish her point.
Okay,
No,
we're
let me
literally
finish
just
my point. I'm trying to say
Oh,
you're saying that how am I trying to define birth defect? I'm saying that they're sterile. They can't have kids. That means that it's a birth defect.
So are
Because
all
they can't have
girls with women
offspring.
So
birth
right,
defects?
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
it
you're
is a
saying
birth
that because
defect
of
if
this,
it's
they are not
biological.
viable humans, in your words,
So is
right? So
that-
I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
would we
because they can't have
consider-
kids and they can't go.
Okay,
Right,
so
but-
are you saying that them quote unquote having a birth defect negates their negates them? Like they're
What do you
still
mean?
like would you say that just because they have a quote unquote birth defect that we should ignore that they don't perfectly fit into one mode or the other?
Right, because in terms of bimodal distribution, like we have to include everyone in
Yeah,
terms
that's
of sex.
literally-
The
Like,
thing
it's-
is, they
it's
are
just-
either
it's-
male or female still, even if they're born with a birth defect. Even
literally-
if they're born with
I
the genitals of
literally-
another
okay,
person, they're still a male
bimodal-
or a female.
Regardless of whether you think that like being intersexual is a birth defect, the fact remains that intersex people exist, and there are certain degrees of masculinization and feminization that certain people can have based on all the
Yeah, but
biological sex characteristics that I've
Akuma,
mentioned.
basically.
So
Okay, hold on a second.
Can I
You
say
keep
something?
saying that it's like a spectrum. But the thing
Exactly.
is, I'm saying that intersex people are outliers. So like the way that you describe it, it makes it sound like there's just like 30% of the population is in between male and female. They don't look like either, but that's not true. Intersex people are such a tiny, minuscule amount of the population that they wouldn't even have an effect.
sorry,
you
I
still
don't know
have to
what you
account
mean
for
by effect. But in terms of like bimodal distribution, we simply
Wait, so-
cannot disregard, intersex people. I'm just gonna repeat the definition of bimodal. A bimodal distribution is, by definition, a continuous probability distribution with two different modes. In other words, it's a spectrum that has clusters. So we're not denying the fact that most people will fit into, the like context of female or male. We're not denying that. However, we are saying it is a spectrum because there are multiple biological markers of sex. And people can align with some of these biological markers as female and some as male, making it a spectrum. To deny that it's bimodal is to deny that intersex people exist. You're literally saying that no one can exist in between female and male. That is what binary means. Bimodal simply means that it's a continuous spectrum with two modes, with two clusters, right?
Okay, so to add on to Rani's point, when you say they're either male or female, you're not understanding how bimodal works. When we look at the pictures we sent, this will help you get a really good idea. We can see at the top of the points are perfect male and females. And then as they go down, they start to have like 99% perfect, 98% perfect, until they meet in the middle where they're just intersex. Right? We can see the box where intersexuality begins. But essentially, when you say they're either male or female, sure, they probably lean one way or the other, but that doesn't negate that they're not perfect females or males.
Okay.
Why is there fucking ISIS music playing?
Which proves our point that it would have to be bimodal, because if they're not two perfect modes with no one existing in the middle, it is by definition bimodal. So like she was saying, unless you want to go against the belief that intersex people exist and are not perfect males or females, you have to concede that it is by definition bimodal. Because as we said
Exactly,
before,
what you
binary
guys are
implies
just-
that there are two perfect groups that we can
Right.
group these two
What you guys are
these
doing is
two
just you
sexes
keep
in.
on asserting the definition of bimodal as something different than what it actually
Binary
is.
implies that there is
Like,
no
we-
overlap between the two groups, which is literally disproved that with the existence of intersex people, because they've overlapping external and internal genitalia, sexual differentiation in the brain, like all of
1.7%
these
of the population.
sexual
And I don't understand how that negates our point.
The thing is, with 1.7% of the population, if this was a graph that actually looked like what it represents, it would look like the graph on the bottom, except there would be a tiny little thin line right
and that
above
thin
the
line
bottom.
that
right,
thin
and
line
that's
makes
still a continuous spectrum.
Yeah, that would still be a continuous
That's
spectrum,
still
no
a
matter how
continuous
small or big it is.
probability.
Except
as
how do you
long as
define
it's
how far they are along the right or the left? Why? Because they have a
that's
penis,
Chaddrick,
but
okay,
the penis
Chaddrick,
doesn't work,
binary
so
by
they're more
definition
masculine,
means
or are
that
they more
no
feminine?
one can fall in between. If you
So
look
you
at like
literally
the
cheated.
infographic that we've cited, it literally means that no one can exist in between. So, you know, when we're talking about bimodal gender, regardless of how, you know, statistically likely it is for you to be intersex people still exist, and they make up 1.7% of the population. Okay,
Right, and
when we're talking about binary gender, that literally just implies, or like binary sex, that literally just implies that intersex people do not exist by definition.
Right, and when you said that there's that thin line, and just because it's small doesn't,
Well,
it's not a spectrum anymore. That's not true, because it's still the spectrum starts if the two groups are connected, because that means there is an overlap. It doesn't matter how small or how possible that overlap is, as long as the overlap exists, which intersex people exist, and that means that there can be an overlap, and therefore the two groups, the two modes, cannot be binary, and therefore must be bimodal. Are you going to go against the mathematical definitions of binary and bimodal?
Question. Couldn't these people be classified as male or female based simply on their biological markers of sex, which are either the chromosomes, the gonads that they have, the
No, because they have
sexual organs?
Going back
Would
to
you
what
like me to-
bimodal is defined as, we can see that it is defined as,
So basically,
bimodal means that they have overlapping characteristics, which intersex people do. They don't have specifically male, specifically female. That's why they're not.
Yes,
perfectly-
but they mostly do. They have either they produce
Okay, but that doesn't
testosterone
negate
or they don't.
right,
They have ovaries.
Right, and by
intersex
definition,
have-
that's bimodal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
like,
here, can I just
it's-
restate the definition?
But
of
you're
bimodal?
pitting them on a spectrum. But how would you define right or left on that spectrum?
It's kind of subjective, but it mostly has to do
They
with how many
do.
overlapping
It's subjective,
intersex
yeah.
characteristics you have. Sure, but the fact is that not everyone's a perfect male or female, and therefore it must exist on a spectrum, because we can't
Pretty
put them
much everybody is a perfect male or a female.
No, actually, most people.
That's actually
probably
wrong.
aren't.
If you'd like to look at the list that I've cited in sources, there are multiple biological markers of sex, and all of these things
You
can
are
be
very unlikely to
influenced
have perfectly
independently of each
female.
other.
You have a penis or a vagina, and if the penis doesn't work and you have a vagina, then
That's not the only.
then you're a female.
That's not the only.
That's not the only
marker.
biological marker of sex. There are chromosomes, gonads, hormones, secondary sex characteristics, external genitalia, internal genitalia, skeletal structure, gene expression, and brain structure. These are all things that pertain to biological sex.
And when we
Would
say
the
that,
skeletal
to
structure
assert
not
that
be
sex is
developed during
simply-
puberty and like your developmental stages?
Sure, but it might not be perfectly male or female.
Right,
You can be
yeah,
female
so
and have like
how-
more male leaning like skeletal structure.
So if
We're
there's a
very
man with wide hips, then he's a female?
That's a female.
No, that's
Wide
not what
hips
we're
and
asserting
narrow
at all.
shoulders?
That's not what we're
That-
asserting.
You're implying that we're only
No, but it
using
makes him
skeletal
more
structure
female.
as, like, the
But it makes him
deciding
more
factor of what
female.
sex means.
Yeah, he wouldn't technically by definition.
Yeah,
be a
that would
perfect
be a more feminine characteristic. Yes, that would
male.
be
Yes.
correct.
So therefore, basically, what?
But he's still a male.
Okay,
This
Chaddrick,
is
let
what
me
we
tell
mean
you
when
what
we
Hold on,
you're
hold on,
put
hold on.
sex
But he's
Your
still a
claim
male.
is- Chaddrick, do you think okay? So when you guys say most people are probably like perfectly male or female, or that they probably lean more towards male or female, you're still proving our point. Unless you want to claim that everyone is either a perfect male or female with absolutely no overlap, you have to concede that sex must be bimodal because sex has bimodal characteristics, because sexual differentiation in all of these different like biological markers and like those overlaps can exist. Would you deny that they can exist?
Right. When we
Because once again,
say
you'd
that
be denying
sex
intersex people.
is when we say sex is bimodal, we're not saying that if you're a male with one specific characteristic that leans towards femininity, that you're not male anymore. We're simply saying that there are multiple factors to be taken into consideration when we're talking about sex, which is why we can't simply attribute sex to only one biological characteristic and then say it's a binary, right?
Can I just say
Hold
one
on,
thing?
but hold on
Chaddrick?
a moment. Hold on a moment. So let's say that a guy has female bone structure, female brain structure, but he still has a penis that works, testicles that work, produces semen. How far along on that graph to you are they?
Sorry.
They would
Okay.
probably.
Because you can't
That's
place
totally-
people on this graph because it's subjective. There's no objectivity to it.
But we're
Right.
not gonna.
Okay. So we're not saying. Okay. So when we're talking about sex as a binary or like as bimodal, we're just saying that there are certain degrees of feminization and masculinization that different people can have. There can be males.
Yeah, but you're taking the exceptions to the rule and trying to use them to disprove the rule.
Chaddrick.
It's not.
Chaddrick,
That's
Akuma,
not
would
what
you guys-
bimodal
can I-
means.
Wait, Ronnie, can I ask someone a question? Would you guys,
That is exactly what bimodal
Chaddrick,
means.
would you make the claim
No.
that every single person is either perfectly male or female? Would you make that claim?
Not perfectly.
So
Okay, and
according
therefore,
to,
since
according to the
everyone cannot be
biological
perfectly
sex
put
characteristics
into
that I
one or
cited,
two groups, by definition, sex must be bimodal. As we've already stated the definition of bimodal twice, and we've shown you a graph, since people can exist in the middle and not perfectly on one of the two modes, there must be a bimodal spectrum. To deny that would be literally denying the existence of intersex people. And as we've already stated,
I'm not denying the existence of
Right,
intersex
but
people.
you
I'm
are-
saying that
when
gender
you
isn't on a
assert
spectrum.
that sex is a binary,
Let-
that is an active denial of intersex people. If
Do
you
you
look
know
at
what
the
binary means?
infographics we cited, the first one is what bimodal is, and then the second one is what binary is. So in the case of binary sex, no one can exist in between female and male. That
you
just
have
means
to
that
be
intersex
perfectly
people
female
don't
or
exist.
perfectly male. If that's not true, then it must be bimodal. That's literally a fact. You cannot deny a fact.
Who the fuck is playing this music?
What is that? Why?
Just mute the bot for now. Holy shit.
Kick it.
Oh my god.
Okay, so Chaddrick, unless you'd like to deny the existence of intersex people, you must concede that since intersex people exist and are not perfectly male or female, it is by definition bimodal.
I don't deny the existence of intersex people. I'm saying that
Great,
it's
so
a
we
birth
agree it's
defect.
bimodal.
Right, so we agree that it's bimodal.
No, I'm
Right,
saying that
we
it's a
already
birth
proved-
defect in it.
Okay,
Huh?
that doesn't
Regardless
negate the
of
fact that they're
what
not
you
perfectly
personally
male or
think about
female.
it
It doesn't
being a
matter
birth
if it's a birth
defect,
defect or not.
the fact is that intersex people exist, and when we're going when we're trying to.
So what do you? Hold on.
probability
So you're trying to
distribution,
say
we have
this whole
to
thing?
put them on the
This whole
spectrum.
hold on. This whole thing ties into transsexuality because you say that transsexual people are just the same as intersex people because they like
No,
chop
we're
off
trying to
their
prove to
balls
you
or
that
something
sex is
and
not
turn
a
it into a
binary.
neo vagina.
And therefore
No, but
cannot
that's
be
how it
used.
would tie in. That's how it would tie into transsexuality, though, right? Because the transsexual people would be moving along the spectrum to female or moving along the spectrum to male, right?
Not
Yeah.
not exactly. When
Then how would it work
talk
if
about
they're becoming female?
Do you want to explain why this is relevant to the conversation?
Right. I don't understand how this negates our point about sex being bimodal.
Like, before we move on to the next point of how this
Like-
ties in, do you want to concede that sex would have to be bimodal then? Or do you want to continue denying the existence of
Because intersex people exist and kind of negates the fact that sex is a binary.
as we
It
already
doesn't- it
showed with
doesn't.
empirical evidence?
It doesn't
I
because
feel, okay, I'm sorry,
it's a
I feel like
birth
we're
defect.
circles
That
here.
means that the
This is
average
getting kind of
population
circular, but
does
I'm-
not exist on this
Chaddrick,
spectrum.
Chaddrick,
Only
look,
intersex people do.
No, we
no, they
can't
all fall on the
exclude
spectrum.
people out of a probability distribution just because you think that they have birth defects, right?
Not
They do
I,
have
as
birth
I just
defects.
said, there are
It's
multiple
a birth
biological
defect, they're
markers
sterile.
of sex. Like the
That
biological
literally doesn't
markers
negate
of
our
sex
point in
don't
any way,
just
shape, or
entail
they still
reproductive
exist.
ability.
We're not going
Sex
to.
isn't solely determined by reproductive ability, so like honestly we can't disregard intersex people just because they can't reproduce in terms of sex. Like we literally cannot do that unless you want to say
So-
that sex is not influenced by other characteristics other than reproductive
which would be
ability.
anti-intellectual.
You also can't
Which
say
would-
that gender is not binary just because there's outliers that are
Yeah.
actually mutations of some chromosomes.
Yeah, like
means-
there's 100,000 people. There's
Sorry,
100,000 people on this
okay.
side and that side, and then there's one person in the middle.
Here is our claim.
So
Our
because
claim
of that
is
one
Right,
person,
yeah, that would technically
there's no such thing
Look,
as
no, okay.
binary sexuality.
Our claim would be that since not everyone is perfectly male or perfectly female, it is by definition bimodal, which is empirically true, as we've already defined bimodal. So unless you want to contest our definition or try and explain why intersex people don't exist, then it must be bimodal. It doesn't matter if they're sterile. Or
I'm not saying
doesn't
they
matter
don't
if the
exist,
birth
just that
defect-
they could either be classified as females or males based on
No,
the.
they can't. 'Cause
Yes,
they
they
have
can.
overlapping
They literally-
characteristics. There
I
is
mean-
no-
I mean,
They have
are-
overlapping
According to the
characteristics that can
biological
easily be fixed.
determining
And just
factors
because
Are people
they're
on a
sex-
spectrum? Are people on a
Okay,
spectrum
no,
between
do you understand how they
stillborn and
exist in the
alive?
middle?
Like,
Okay,
I mean,
that's
it's
not-
another
they're
birth
not
defect.
perfect.
Chaddrick. Okay,
Because there's
okay.
babies that are born stillborn. Suddenly
It
we're
not
on a
being
spectrum between stillborn and
implies
alive.
that everyone is perfectly male or female.
Sorry, that's not
That
a
is
valid
what the
comparison.
point
We're
is.
talking about sex as a concept,
I'm
right?
t- we're
We're
talking about birth
given that
defect.
there are all of these
Intersex is a
biological-
birth defect.
That
It's not the
doesn't
norm
matter.
by
Okay,
any
Chaddrick
means.
doesn't negate our point.
Wait,
Our
Buttface, can
point is that
can I just take this for a minute?
Yeah.
So we're talking about how there are multiple biological determining factors for sex. So based on this, intersex people, because they don't conform to, like they can have half of their biological, determining factors be more masculinized and the others be more feminized. Because of this, we can't accurately say that they're either male or female, right? Based on purely just sex, which is why the concept of intersex exists. That's literally why it exists. So when we're talking about sex being bimodal, since intersex people exist, and while they may face like varying degrees of masculinization and feminization, since they exist, sex by definition is bimodal. There's no way that we can, disregard them from sex as a concept just because you think that they're a genetic defect.
You're trying to
Okay,
you're trying
okay,
to take
wait, hold on,
subjective
hold on.
definitions of sex and make
hold
them
on.
objective.
Binary, make this like your last point, and then we're gonna move on to transitionary surgery. So you'll try to refute this, and then we'll move on. Okay?
Me or them?
No, Chaddrick.
Akuma and
Okay.
Chaddrick.
Okay.
We'll respond to this point and then move on.
All right. So what's your point? What are you gonna say?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Just because these people have some characteristics of the other gender, that doesn't make them the other gender completely. They still have
Yeah.
characteristics of their own gender as well, and based on what chromosomes they have, we can determine whether they're male or female, and just sort them on our binary gender spectrum, whatever the fuck you want to call it, just based on that, whether they have on Y chromosome or not.
Okay, as
All right.
much as I'd love to rebut that right now,
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
we are moving on.
We are moving on. It's been about
So
40 minutes of the same point. So
I'm
now
so
we're moving on to the next point of transitionary surgery.
Just to restate our claims on this, we believe that transitionary surgery is very effective at treating gender dysphoria and should be the first option you go to. We think it's not a harmful thing. So, so you're claiming that it's harmful, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at
Yes.
my sources
So
right
you'd
now.
be taking the affirmative here. Do you have any empirical evidence of that?
We
Otherwise,
have
we can-
many.
Okay.
Let me just find my sources and I'm gonna send them to you. Many sources that we have claim that there's infections, there's many other things that could happen and go wrong with the surgery. So do you have anything to say that's gonna
Would you say
go
that?
against that? While I'm looking for the source.
Yeah, things can go wrong with any surgery. Like, to say that just because something can go wrong, it shouldn't be an option is kind of ignorant, because things can go wrong with a lot of surgeries. Like, for example, heart
Right.
surgery. We know it's mostly effective and good at treating things. There's empirical evidence to show that, but you could definitely accidentally kill someone on the table. Are you going to argue that heart surgery shouldn't be a thing because of that?
We're not making the assertion.
No,
that
but
there
it's
are
the
no
surgery that needs to happen because it's gonna save someone's life. While transitionary surgery is not one that's gonna save someone's life. It's
Right,
a surgery
but
that's
surgery
purely
is
for
very
someone's.
exclusively-
Can I
Okay,
can I make a
Akuma.
point? It's a surgery that's purely for someone's appearance and not one that needs to be done to save someone's life.
It's mental health treatment.
Okay,
Unless you want
so-
to negate the importance of
Mental health can be treated in many different ways and not just surgery. Would you
Okay.
treat schizophrenia with fucking surgery? No. That's
Okay.
because it's mental health issue
Okay,
that can
so-
be treated with
Here, let me get my
First of
source
all,
on the connection between mental health and transsexuality here.
Right. Okay. So basically,
transsexuality or
what we're-
transitionary surgery?
Transsexuality, which leads to transitionary surgery.
Okay. So basically, so in response to Akuma, when we talk about transitionary surgery, first of all, surgery doesn't only have to be to save someone's life. It can be to improve the quality of life, and that in this case, where trans people face overwhelming mental health issues because of gender dysphoria, transition surgery and making their, physical body, physical sex characteristics align more with the, the brain structure, with their brain structure, this would help their mental health a
Also,
lot. And we
Chaddrick.
have empirical data for this as well. So when we're talking about, I don't understand what you mean that transition surgery or just surgery in general should only be conducted when it's life-saving, because there are multiple medical procedures that are meant to just improve quality of life and are not necessarily supposed to be
Can I add something
life-saving.
to your point? So, Chaddrick, the thing you're about to send us, just to make sure, it is talking about transsexuality leading up to transitionary surgery.
No, it's gender dysphoria, which is
Gender dysphoria.
transsexuality.
Right. Gender dysphoria is obviously going to cause higher suicide rates. That's why we have people transition. To disprove our point, you'd need to find a study that claims
No, hold up.
in its claim that after transitionary surgery, their mental health declined in general, which isn't true. We can send
I have
empirical
a
evidence.
source. I have a source that says that here, where is it? 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rates of those who had undergone sex assignment reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers. But what I'm putting here is the connection between hold on a moment. What I'm putting here is I'll put the source about the suicide rates, but this is something Akuma found. What I put here about the parents of parents of ROGD kids, it's talking about the connections between gender dysphoria and
Excuse me?
mental disorders like borderline personality disorder, autism, difficulty accepting homosexual feelings, social contagion, sexual assault, other trauma, bullying for being too effeminate or too butch, parents' wishes for a child of the other gender, feeling like a social outcast for any reason, depression and anxiety disorders, body dysmorphia and eating disorders, cultural homophobia, and other possible causes. This is what I'm saying when I say that you can treat.
So are you saying that we cannot attribute it to transitionary surgery, and that we could possibly attribute it to just being transsexual and the whole cultural norms around being transsexual and how it's not okay?
Right.
Like, there are a lot of
No. Read my source. I'm not going to let you get away with that. I'm saying right now that it's connected to mental disorders like borderline personality disorder or autism or homosexuality or social contagion.
Homosexuality is, first of all,
homosexuality is not.
It's not controlled by
mental
factors.
illness.
It's not a mental.
We can debate that. We can debate that some other time, but it's connected to homosexuality.
There's no, and homosexuality isn't changed by environmental factors. It's something programmed into your brain beforehand.
Yeah, it isn't changed by environmental factors like that. And second of all, if you're making an affirmative that homosexuality is a mental health illness when it's not actually medically classified.
My source says difficulty accepting homosexual feelings is what an underlying cause of gender dysphoria. But actually, the only reason that homosexuality is no longer considered a mental illness in America is because the homosexuals were protesting, and there was a 58% vote.
Right, for good reason.
There was a 58% vote.
Oh, God.
Being written off as a mental health
Hold
illness.
on a moment.
I'm looking at your source.
I would be protesting as well.
The first key takeaway is that sex change is physically impossible, and it frequently does not. So therefore, it frequently does not provide the long-term wholeness and happiness that people seek. Now, they're not trying to change their sex. They're trying to change their physical appearance to match up with the sexual differentiation that's already in their brain. They're not trying to physically change their sex. They're trying to make them have their appearance fit their gender identity better. So that claim is already invalid.
Alrighty. So we are going to get.
So he's already taking this under the wrong premise. Furthermore, I can send you a source that actually completely disagrees with your point.
What was the point Akuma made that point?
Whatever.
Confirmation surgery, recovery, complications.
Here, I'll send you the link too. But
Akuma, are you gonna defend your point, or are you just gonna be quiet there?
It's fine.
So basically, thank you. This study finds that quality of life following male to female sex reassignment surgery was, in all categories that they looked at, the quality of life rose.
Are we gonna address the detransitioning that happens in transgender people later on?
So, sorry, what do you mean what happens later on? As in,
I mean, there's a whole lot of detransitioning, and can I talk for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
There's a whole lot of detransitioning happening, and 10 years, most of the time, 10 years after the transitionary surgery, the suicide rate actually went up for most transgender people.
Right, okay, so correlation
I'm gonna find out as well.
Causation. Right, so when we talk about transition surgery and then we say that individuals who underwent transition surgery later had higher suicide rates, this is
I can't post my source because it gives me bad word usage. Sorry for that. Possibly because of suicide.
So basically, to address your point about suicide rates, correlation does not equal causation. If you're gonna say that there is a certain group of people who underwent transition surgery and later on,
you're trying to say that the correlation between getting transsexual surgery and suicide is non-existent because correlation doesn't equal causation. They compare.
I never said
They
that.
compare.
I just said
Hold
you
on,
have
hold
to
on, hold on.
prove
They
that
they
it's
compare.
actually because of transition surgery and not because of other influencing factors, like, for example, social stigma and the marginalization of trans communities.
Well, if the whole point of transsexual surgery is to make them look more like females and more like males, then do you not see the problem there if they're still getting bullied for not being female?
No,
But-
I wouldn't blame that on them, and I wouldn't blame that on transition surgery because, in terms of sexual differentiation in the brain, they experience gender dysphoria because of the fact that, their mental state of sex does not align with their physical state.
And I'm gonna send a source that's
right. Okay, so Buttface is gonna send her source, but basically, what we're trying to assert is that because of this, because of their mental health issues, because of sexual differentiation in the brain, they need to go through transition surgery to help with that. And we have empirical evidence to back up the transition surgery actually does improve the mental health.
Right.
Except
I just sent you a source
hold
that
on.
says
After
we
the
lack evidence that it
transition
benefits
surgery,
education.
they're killing themselves 20 times more
If the
than
issue
people
is
who
with
haven't had transition surgery.
transphobia, then we can
or being trans.
So if the issue is with transphobia, then we can definitely focus more on education and the normalization of transgender individuals, and spreading information about what exactly they go through, sexual differentiation in the brain, and just normalizing that, and getting rid of social stigma.
And okay, I have a study.
This is comparing transsexuals who haven't transitioned to transsexuals that have transitioned, and the suicide rate is 20 times higher.
Right. Okay. And this can be because
Do you not
of
see
social
that
stigma,
that is a correlation
right?
between suicide and transsexual surgery? Do you deny that?
Right. Right. So there is also the issue that social stigma can become worse for transgender individuals post-transition surgery. Right?
Well, what do you think would happen if
transition
everybody
surgery.
became transgender and everybody was sterile and couldn't have kids because they've chopped off their testicles and scooped out their vaginas? That's why there's a social stigma.
Right. So why are we
That's how
blaming that
social stigma works.
on
Social stigma is to stop
or
unhealthy
transition surgery?
practices from becoming normalized in society. When you eliminate social stigma, stuff like this starts happening. They have safe spaces where they can fester and get these ideas in their heads.
It's not. It's already in their brains because of sexual differentiation, which we already proved. But
Oh yeah,
like,
sure,
what
but they get
I've been trying
affirmed
to
by
say for the past 5
their
minutes
family
is
members.
there's a
and
study that was done to 50 trans people in Sweden, and as a 5-year follow-up to their transitionary surgeries and SRSs, and no one regretted
50.
being trans or SRS. I can send a link to that if you'd like.
Kuma, do you see the sample size of the study in that thing about the suicide rates?
I didn't check it. What was it?
Here, let me find it.
I'm just sending other sources for suicide rates. But I'm trying to censor it because I keep getting
324 participants. So we have a higher sample size. I mean, 50 patients, that's not a lot at all. Can you turn off that fucking bot? That's
Okay, so
Yeah.
I also
Never mind.
another
do you know how much
meta-analysis on transgender people and the effect gender transition has on their mental health. Of 56 studies, 52 indicated transitioning has a positive effect on the mental health of transgender people, and 4 indicated it had mixed
Martin
or
Luther
no
King.
results.
I have a question. If transitionary surgery is let's say it is bad, which it isn't. What other options do they have?
Mental health is a real thing, and there's a psychologist for everything.
If you paid attention to what I've been sending, look at hold on.
It's
Pay attention to my sources. I'm sending.
problem anyway.
There's other underlying causes for gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria isn't always just, oh, I have gender dysphoria. Often, like, there's a huge correlation between autism and transsexuality.
Surgery
Sorry. So, are you trying to deny the fact that transgender individuals do have sexual differentiation in their brains? I'm confused as
Yes.
to what point you're trying to illustrate.
We already proved
because
that
we
they do.
already demonstrated with empirical evidence, and I can cite another source as well, that transgender people, their brain
Also,
tends to mirror
How many
the sex
transgender
they
people?
You're trying to
identify as.
Hold
imply
on.
that they're just like someone's gonna walk into a doctor's office, say, "Hey, I think I'm dysphoric," and they're like, "Oh, okay, so you're probably dysphoric. I'm gonna definitely do the surgery on you without going through any screening or getting you diagnosed and then finding out the best treatment plan for you," because that's literally how doctors' visits work.
Just look at
They're letting
just look
kids
at Canada.
transition nowadays.
They're snatching up the kids
As
from
far
their
as mental health
parents,
goes,
and they're
there's a-
giving them hormone
I'm gonna send
therapy
a source that
without the parents'
shows
permission.
an association between recalled exposure to gender identity conversion efforts, increases psychological distress and suicide attempts among transgender adults, which proves that your method is harmful.
So, are you trying to say that transsexual kids aren't as valid as adult kids then, or sorry, adult transsexuals?
That's a complete straw
Because
man.
if their brain isn't fully developed, then it has a chance to develop into the brain that matches their sexuality or their physical
that's
sex.
just not how biology
Sexual
works,
differentiation
unfortunately.
is permanently programmed into your brain while you're still in the womb. We already proved this.
Right, this is in
their source.
We're talking about sexual
Where is it?
differentiation attributed
It's
to
at the
prenatal
beginning.
conditions.
I can send it again if you want.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't think you cited the link.
I did.
Okay, never mind. You did.
Okay, and then there's another study that proves that transgender individuals still have sexual differentiation in their brain. So I'll send that as well. This one
Specific
is
cerebral activation due to visual erotic stimuli in male to female transsexuals compared with male and female controls.
They have gender specific.
Therefore, we postulated that male to female transsexuals may show specific cerebral activation differing from their biological gender. Cerebral activation patterns during viewing of erotic film excerpts and so hold on. Does this only include quote unquote heterosexual transsexuals, which is gay according to their biological sex? Because homosexuals and heterosexuals could feel or have different.
It's literally just showing them erotic stimuli.
Yeah, but a homosexual would most likely have different parts of their brain light up when they receive
They're
stimuli.
heterosexual, first of all.
Okay, but
Right,
but according to their biological sex, they're homosexuals. That's the thing.
Okay, so when we're talking about in the context of the study, the results show significantly enhanced activation for men compared with women was revealed in brain areas involved in erotic processing, i.e. the thalamus, the amygdala, and the orbital frontal and insular cortex, whereas no specific activation for women was found. When comparing MTF transsexuals with male volunteers, activation patterns similar to female volunteers being compared with male volunteers were revealed. Sexual arousal was assessed using standard rating scales and did not differ significantly for the three groups.
Could this not be the difference between a dominant sexual response to stimuli and a submissive one? Because if male is thinking about,
do you think every male is dominant and every woman is submissive?
Generally, yes.
That's not true. I don't want to.
That's just not true, right?
You're making. I don't want to talk about dominant and submissive. Though that doesn't sit right with me. But this, you're backpedaling on the fact.
Okay, but hold on a moment. Hold on a moment. The male is the one acting on the female when they have sex, right? So would that not be the dominant?
I don't want to say this, but do you know what pegging is?
That's not normal sex though.
Unfortunately, it's very common. Also, just because one is
people things up.
What do you mean by normal sex?
Submissive.
Sorry,
I don't want to talk about this.
Explain what you mean by normal sex.
Not normal.
Okay, let's not get into this.
Chaddrick, you have to empirically prove that most females are submissive and submissive and most males are dominant. Otherwise, you are not disproving our study.
Exactly.
Because our study, because this is a gender-specific result,
And we can see the transsexuals.
Do you not see how males would be? Okay, let's remove.
Chaddrick, can you prove that males are?
Let's
Can
remove
you please,
dominant
like, if
and
you're gonna
submissive.
make affirmative
The
claims,
males
you
are
have to
acting
understand
on
that, like, we
female
can't
when they
Chaddrick,
have.
give us
without
empirical
empirical
evidence that males are more sexually dominant than females. And
Hold on. Okay, no. But hold on. Even if they're not dominant and submissive, there's still the active and the what's the word? The active and the passive roles. Like a homosexual is either active or passive in sex, and that would be the same with women because one's getting penetrated and one's penetrating.
Sorry, I'm so confused as to how this has any relevance.
Rani, can you say what you sent me in DMs?
Cerebral active. Hold on. Because I'm saying that this could be stimuli telling them to go and have sex with that thing. Where in the women it would be sit here and try and attract the male to have sex with me.
Okay, and let's say that is your point.
Yeah.
That doesn't negate the fact that there would still be gender-specific results that these people are
What about
having.
homosexuals?
There
Are you denying the validity of homosexuals because
No, that's not.
only females can get penetrated?
These people are heterosexual volunteers, right? 12 male and 12 female.
The transsexuals are not heterosexual. If they're heterosexual transsexuals, but that just means homosexual because their biological sex is male, but they're
homosexual.
No.
Sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Their sexual orientation, they are straight. They are attracted to the opposite gender. Therefore, they are, and only the opposite gender, and therefore they are straight. If these people are straight, you cannot just say they're not straight.
They're not homosexual, or they're not heterosexuals.
Yes, they are.
They're males. They're males. A male to female, they're males. If it was female to male, they'd be females. They're still females.
No, they're not.
No, we literally just proved why that is not correct. Again, if we're gonna go back to all of our biological markers of sex, we cannot.
But even then, it still doesn't. It still doesn't disprove what I've said about the passive versus the active.
You haven't really provided.
Because heterosexual sex, there's passive and the active, and the male is almost always the active, and the female is almost always the passive.
Right. First of all, there's like no data for your claim, so I don't know how I'm supposed to accept it without any evidence. Like again, I literally cannot.
I'm postulating on it because there's no data. Hold on. There's no data that says that this means that they're females because they respond the same way females do. If they did, let's say they did a study with homosexual submissives.
Because that's a biological marker of sex. Brain structure is.
Correlation isn't a causation, though, right, guys?
What? No.
This
Wait,
is causation.
what? In this case,
how's it causation? Because I'm trying to say I'm saying that there could be I'm saying that there could be a different explanation for this homosexuality.
Chaddrick, homosexuals don't have the sexual differentiation of a different gender.
Exactly.
They just
what?
We have like.
Your mic cut out.
Do you understand what we mean when we say sexual differentiation, Chaddrick? Do you understand?
Do you know what that means?
Do you understand that there are multiple biological determinants for sex, and brain structure is one of these biological markers? So when we're talking about transgender individuals, their biological, like their physical sex characteristics do not align with their brain structure, causing gender dysphoria. Homosexuals are not the same thing.
That's why they don't
at all.
Gender dysphoria.
And they don't.
I'm explaining. Hold on.
Differentiation.
I'm using homosexuality as a possible explanation of this outcome.
Different. Like the data completely disproves that. homosexuals aren't going to have gender specific because they're still the same gender. They're not going to have gender specific.
No, but let's say
results
that a homosexual is exclusively penetrated and never penetrates. Would they not respond to stimuli from penetration?
But it's
and
not about
not from...
it's not about what.
Sorry, it's not.
They're all watching the same content. It's what parts of their brain are working, and their gender.
Hold on. The penetration gets the dominant homosexual going, but being penetrated gets the submissive homosexual.
Okay, hold on.
Chaddrick, it's not about what gets them going. It's about how they're getting.
It is about what gets them going. It's about the brain
Chaddrick,
response from stimuli.
That's not what the study's point is. The study's point is because certain parts of the brain activate for males and certain parts of the brain activates for females. We can see transgender individuals, their sexual characteristics don't allow the sexual differentiation in the brain because the brain activity is different from their other biological.
Okay.
And
I was
all
trying
that,
to do this before.
50 cents can buy you a cup of coffee.
All right. I was trying to do this before. We're going to move on to final statements. All right. I'm unmuting them, but we are going to move on to final statements.
Okay. I think I'm giving my side's closing statement, right, Rani?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I hope this was productive. I hope we made you guys think critically about some stuff. As far as our closing statement, I would say that we proved on both topics that we had enough empirical evidence and enough data to back up our claims, and for the first part, to deny our claim, which we factually proved multiple times, was anti-intellectual of them and should not have been done, but we started going around in circles there. So I'm really sorry about that. And as far as the second topic goes, I do think we had a lot more of a empirical standpoint where we were able to back up all of our claims with biological evidence and start to criticize their empirical evidence, which I think shows that we had a much more in-depth understanding of this topic. More than anything, we really enjoyed debating today. It was really great, and we hope we can do this again.
Oh, bitch.
Who the fuck keeps talking?
All right. Other
Better
side.
kick Jagu from the chat. It must be him.
All right. Other
Should just
side.
ban him
Give
from
your
the
final
server.
statement.
You guys just dance around our points, and you don't acknowledge any of them. Like we say that. What did we say? We said that suicide rates are much higher after you transition by 20 times, and then you try and explain away saying, oh, there's social stigma against transsexual people. But I do the same thing when you say that male to female transsexuals respond the same way that females do to sexual stimuli. But suddenly it's, oh, I'm being anti-intellectual because where's my source, right? But you don't need a source when you say that transsexuals killing themselves at a rate of 20 times what they would if they weren't transitioned. Like you don't provide a source for that. For oh, there's social stigma, right? I'm postulating when I say that homosexual reactions to sexual stimuli could explain male to female transsexuals reacting the same way to women as women do. But you don't acknowledge that. You just dance around the point. So that's what I have to say. Kuma, do you have anything to say?
Well, first of all, we did bring up a few sources that you didn't really acknowledge, and especially because Butt kept deleting them. But we did prove that suicide rates are higher, especially 10 years after transitioning. We did prove that there is a lot of detransitioning happening. We did prove that there's also bad effects on children who take hormonal drugs for transition. We did prove that surgery is really bad and doesn't actually have proven positive effects on their mental health.
And did we
so
not
if you have anything else to say to that, that would be
Hold on.
great.
Did we not also show our source about where was it? It was the no, it wasn't the detransitioning. It was
Is 2 minutes over
80%
yet?
80% of
God.
80% of children who identify as transsexual
Well-
change their mind after a couple years.
Okay, this is a closing statement on all of that. It's a wrap up of like what was.
I know.
discussed in
I'm
the-
just seeing.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing if I already brought up the
Your
source.
closing
once-
statement is supposed
Yeah,
to be left.
hold
to
on,
you
one
and
moment.
Sum up how you feel about the debate, not continue to debate us. If you want, we can schedule another.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about you completely ignoring some of our sources because you don't like them.
No, because we have.
Then
valid
just
criticism.
talk. You can talk about the essence of that. You cannot like go into more specifics because then that would be part of the.
I can't give an example. No. But I can talk
You've given
about
like
it.
5 examples.
What? You don't go into a specific like start naming out your source and then everything to revamp your claim because then we're just back into the free flow thing. Closing statement is just supposed to be like,
How you felt
reviewing
about
what you have said throughout the debate and then commenting on it, basically.
Well, here's the point I made about 80% of transsexual kids changing
Like
their
you
mind.
just said. Chill on the points, please.
Well, I said the point earlier, and I'm showing that you didn't listen. So there it is.
Okay, so I think that about covers it. All in all, I would like to thank both parties for engaging, and I think for about an hour or so. So that's a lot. That's a lot of debating. I congratulate you both for I guess lasting that long. But yeah, right now I think we're gonna go head over into the staff EC, discuss the debate with the judges and such, and determine I guess who won this debate and then like critiques of it and comments on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yo, good debating, guys.
Thanks, Jagu. Thanks.
Both you guys did pretty good, not gonna lie.
Jago must have been sweating there and not being able to mute us, huh?
I know, bro. You don't understand. I just wanted to. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain literally just died.
How many people? Hold on. Before you end it, how many people are watching?
Whole
Days,
hype.
days.
Telegram.me
Everyone
slash
who's been
Patriot Front.
everyone who's been banned.
I mean,
from
Autumn
this weekend
Front.
is currently watching.
Adios, Bill Gates.